Hello, everyone. Welcome to another chat with Beyond Type 2. I'm Tiara, and I'm the Senior Project Manager of Beyond Type 2. Beyond Type 2 is a resource hub for people living with type 2 diabetes or people impacted with type 2 diabetes. We have resources such as food and diabetes, mental health, exercise, and pretty much all you need to learn on how to manage type 2 diabetes daily. And today I am here joined by my friend and also amazing physical health coach advocate, type 2 diabetes advocate, Dr. Liz Cambron. Liz, please say hello to your audience.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming in and watching, and thanks for Tiara for having me.
Yes, so we're so excited to dive into a topic that it's pretty undiscussed in the type 2 diabetes community.
Mhm.
We are discussing hypoglycemia. So the reason why I'm chatting with Liz today is because if you follow her on Instagram, which her Instagram profile will be in the description box, you'll see that Liz is very physically active. She is always posting her workouts. She is posting her healthy food. So she makes it a priority for her
Mhm.
lifestyle. And I wanted to talk to her to see how that it impacts her ability to manage low blood sugar. So we're going to dive into that. But first, let's actually talk to Liz about her diagnosis story. Liz, so when were you first diagnosed with type 2 diabetes?
Yeah, so I was first diagnosed in 2014, late 2014. I had just started grad school. I had, moved away for the first time, so it was a real big transition. But it was also a really big stressful time in my life. So it actually happened because I was working out and I blacked out. And it happened a couple times, but it wasn't until I was working out really hard and I ended up blacking out and hitting my head on my dining room table. So I had to go to the doctor at that point, just to make sure everything was okay, that I didn't get a concussion. Thankfully, it wasn't too bad. But that's when they started looking into, okay, let's do some more blood work, lab work to see why this is happening, because it's not normal to black out after a workout. And so after looking into some blood work and looking at other labs, they looked and found that I was pre-diabetic. And
Mm,
so at that point, I'm like, okay, it's still early on. I can do this if I eat right and healthy. Like that's what society tells you, that if you just would have worked out more and ate healthier, you could prevent this. And so that's the mentality I had at the time. And even though I would run a lot and work out a lot, I was still eventually diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic. And
mm,
so it was not a complete surprise. About 90% of my family is diabetic as Mexican American. So it's very predominant in my family and in my culture.
yeah.
But it definitely was like an ego slap to know that like I was the healthiest one of my family, but I was still developing this disease.
Yeah. And so we first I think that goes to show that if you are diagnosed with prediabetes, you can really do all of the right things and still be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes later on. So how did you handle that in the beginning? I know we've talked before about your journey from your diagnosis to becoming the person you are now. Could you take us through that again?
Yeah. So it was really hard at the beginning,
Yeah.
because diabetes doesn't care how old you are, how big or small you are, what your culture is. And so that makes it very personal. And so my diabetes journey is going to be different than yours or someone else's. So as much as I try to, I didn't want to, but I got advice from my family. Like they told me, what, well, you need to do this is eat more cinnamon, or, don't eat carbs, or don't do this, or, make sure you get this medication. So it was like a lot of noise getting thrown at me at the beginning. And fortunately, when I was diagnosed, I was sent to a diabetes educator, was given a bunch of pamphlets, and was like, okay, good luck. And that was really hard because, trying to navigate this on your own is very different than like helping my mom with her diabetes, because she's at a different level than I was. And so she was on like 50 different medications, it felt like. And that was my biggest fear. And so the beginning of my diabetes journey was very fear filled.
Mm,
Fear of getting my foot amputated, fear of living on medications for the rest of my life. But also fear of the stigmas that now I'm just this lazy, fat, overweight person, and that's who I'm destined to be. So why even try? And that really impacted my depression and anxiety, which also increases due to diabetes. And so it was really hard to navigate that, but also without the education that I needed to really understand, okay, I know what nutrition is. I have a background in biology, but nutrition for a diabetic is very different. So carbs isn't just bread. Carbs is also fruit.
Yeah.
And watermelon's my favorite fruit, but I can't eat a whole watermelon anymore. So learning about things in moderation, the glycemic index, that took time to figure out on my own. And so I feel like it took me twice as long to figure things out because I had to learn the hard way of just trying and doing. But once I eventually hit kind of a low point, that's when things really started to change. So as you mentioned, I've always enjoyed working out, but my nutrition has always been the hardest. So I deal with, and I still work on emotional eating. So lots of binge eating was happening in the beginning. It's okay if I eat McDonald's because then I'll just work out for 2 hours to, counter that. And that's not how that works.
Yeah.
But also my lifestyle was just not what it needed to be to live a healthier life. So I was in grad school during this whole time. So my own health and my own journey was kind of on the back burner. I was, busy with school, trying to figure that out. I was also still taking care of my mom. So I was last on my list. And so that meant drive-throughs, that meant not sleeping, that meant, working out if I had a chance. And so that really took a toll on my body, and it made managing my diabetes that much harder. Because in my mind, I was doing everything I could. I was working out 2 hours a day, but I was eating McDonald's only like once or twice a week. Like that's good. And so not really understanding what was expected of me for my own health, I think was a real big challenge. And it wasn't until probably maybe a year and a half ago where I was finally put on insulin. And that, like, it shouldn't have been, but it was a low point for me because that's where that original fear from the very beginning came in of, crap, I'm on insulin now. That means it's getting worse. That means I'm just destined to be this unhealthy diabetes person. And I had to just take a step back. Like there's a lot of emotion involved in this diagnosis.
Right.
And that really makes fear that much bigger.
Yeah.
And so I took a step back, and with a background in biology, I'm like, okay, let me think about this from that standpoint. My body doesn't make insulin or doesn't use it properly.
Right.
So that means when I work out, my muscles aren't getting the sugars that they need to work because they're working, they need fuel, and my body's not giving it to it. So my body needs insulin. It's like my body's a car. If there's a piece that's not working, you don't hate the car, you just change the piece and get it to work again. And so when I switched that mindset, it really made such a big difference because it wasn't me fighting my body, it was me working with my body.
Right.
And so it helped me understand and really get in tune with my own body and understanding, okay, what does my body do when I'm on this medication, when I'm eating this food, when I work out in the morning versus night. And so I really learned a lot about my body the past year and a half. And when I stopped kind of fighting being on medication and working with my healthcare provider, I was able to find the medications that would help me. So being on insulin helped. Being on other injections like Victoza helped. Being on oral medication, so being on 2 types of medications, oral and injected, really made a difference. And it helped my body get to a point where my body is like, okay, we got this, we can do this. Just keep doing what you're doing. So it's been an up and down journey, as I think any other diabetic will tell you theirs is. But it's been trial and error. Just figuring out what works for me
Yeah.
has been really hard, because it's frustrating. Like, you see your neighbor who has diabetes and lost weight and is off medications, and they're doing great, and they're like, well, that's just what you need to do. Like, what if you tried that? And I'm like, well, I did, and it didn't work. And that's
Right.
because my body's different.
Right, right. Oh, Liz, thank you so much for just for sharing your journey, and even thank you so much
Mm,
for sharing that you were on insulin and how you felt, but how you've evolved to say like my body's a car that's missing a piece,
mhm.
and I need to learn to work with my body instead of fighting it. And I think part of the reason why, in type 2 diabetes specifically, why when people hear uh it's time to go on insulin, it's because the stigma is, well, if you're on insulin, that means that you didn't do everything right the first time. And that's just not true. Your body just needs it. And that's okay as well.
Yeah.
But because you're on insulin, how did your doctor ever talk to you about low blood sugar and hypoglycemia? What was your education around there?
Yeah. So it wasn't until I was on, um, so I was on Victoza, I was on Lantus and Glipizide, and I just recently started Jardians.
Okay.
And so it wasn't until I was on that one that I was kind of explained a little bit more about hypoglycemia.
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, I never had any hypoglycemic events, so it wasn't really a concern. But once I was on all four of these medications, that's when they're like, okay, there's going to be some interactions. So, this is what you need to look for. And if that happens, let me know so we can adjust things as needed. And so once I got on all four, it was like hypoglycemic events every day.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was exhausting.
Yeah.
I just always felt like I didn't have energy because my body wasn't getting fuel.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where it was scary to be alone. Like, I was afraid to drive to work. I was afraid to be by myself. Um, and so my first hypoglycemic event on my own, it didn't really click at first that that's what was happening. I
Mhm.
was like, why am I feeling nauseous? Why am I feeling like really sleepy? Like, my head is spinning.
Mm.
And at first I thought that it must be my anxiety. I must be having a panic attack. Um, and so I didn't even think of checking my sugar.
Mm.
Or I've also had issues with low blood pressure. So I'm like, that must be it.
Mm.
So I'm like, well, I better go eat some salt.
Mm.
And it wasn't until a few more events that um, I realized, like, okay, this is what's happening, and I should check my sugar.
Yeah.
Even if it's maybe not due to hypoglycemia, I should still check it.
Right.
And so I made sure to let those around me know what to do, so that way we're all prepared. And so I always have food with me. I have some sort of snack. I buy juice boxes, which is, nostalgic. So I appreciate that. Um, but my fiance, Jamie, who I'm with most of the time, especially during this pandemic,
Yeah.
I made sure that he knew what to look for and what to do. And so my first hypoglycemic event with him, he like was freaked out. He's like, you looked so pale and you looked like you were dying. And I'm like, I felt like I was dying.
Yeah.
Um, so he understands why we have juice boxes in the pantry. He understands why we have candy, why we have all these other juices, um, and why I need juice versus like a piece of fruit,
Right.
because you need your body to quickly absorb it,
Right.
versus having to digest it first. And so knowing that he knows what to look for and what he knows what to do makes me feel a lot more comfortable with, even if I do have a hypoglycemic event at home, he
Yeah.
knows what to do. Um, it's even prepared me to a way of, I have emergency contacts on my phone in case anything happens in public and I'm by
Right.
myself, paramedics can help get my information.
Yeah.
So it feels almost like doomsday planning. Like, okay, I have to get all these things done and make sure I have all this stuff with me.
Yeah.
But I feel safer because of it.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's no, but you're preparing pretty well because hypoglycemia, I mean, it can happen, and if it gets severe enough, you can
Mhm.
have some serious health complications. Um, so it's great that your fiance is prepared, that your family knows what to do, that you keep things on you. Do you know how low your blood sugar has dropped?
I think the lowest it's gotten is probably about 40.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and like I said, this past year and a half, I've really learned to listen to my body. So I can catch when my sugars are going low. So I'm like, oh, I'm starting to feel a little queasy. That's not normal. Let me check
Yeah.
my sugars. So really knowing what hypoglycemic feels for you is really important because like my mom, when her sugars would get low, she would get really sweaty. And
Hmm.
so like now I know when I feel this, this, and this, I
Yeah.
better go check my blood sugar and grab a juice box.
Yeah, same. I know when I get low, I get really hungry, I get a headache, and I get
Mm.
shakes. Like I feel like
Yeah.
I'm shaking all the time. Now, do you still wear a continuous glucose monitor?
Yeah. Well, I have a long sleeve shirt on, but yeah.
Okay. So has that helped you identify when you are going low? And do you use it? Do you like scan more frequently when you're working out to just make sure your blood sugar isn't dropping fast or low?
Yeah. So I will never not use a continuous glucose monitor. It has been amazing. And that's really what also helped me fine tune my medications. So we know when my sugars go down, how they fluctuate throughout the day, after I eat, before I eat. So it's really helped me learn kind of my daily rhythms of my sugar levels.
Yeah.
But I scan pretty frequently, one, because it's easy,
Yeah.
um, but also because I love how much data it gives you. So
Yeah.
like my nerd background, I love seeing all the graphs and all the, statistics that it provides.
Yeah.
Um, but when I when I work out, I usually scan right after, mainly because it also has an option where you can log like your workout. You can log, I just had food, and
Right.
it'll show it on there. So that helps my healthcare providers see, okay, what does your sugars do after you work out, after you eat? So it's a really good way to track everything.
Right, right. And before you work out, do you eat a snack before just to prepare for low blood sugar, or at least how do you prepare for low blood sugars before your workouts?
Yeah. So thankfully, I don't really have hypoglycemic events as much after I work out. They usually go a little bit higher because I think my muscles are still not getting all the sugars they need. So I'll
Right.
get a rush into the bloodstream. But I always prepare, I have like a pre workout before that does have some carbs in it.
Yeah.
So that really helps. But if it's, I personally don't like eating before I work out because they're usually high intense workouts, and um, doing any kind of food with that just doesn't work with my body.
Yeah.
But it's really important for people to know whether or not you get low blood sugar when you're working out, because then you should take a snack beforehand, even if it's like half a bite of a banana,
Right.
but have
Right.
something to prepare. So like I said, I always have juice boxes, and I always make sure to eat after I work out too,
Yeah.
to refuel my body.
And when it comes to just general hypoglycemia awareness in the type 2 community, in your opinion, why is this such an important initiative to have? Like why should we focus on hypoglycemia for people with type 2 diabetes?
Yeah. I think a big part of it is because it's not necessarily, oh, sorry.
Penn State.
Okay. Not necessarily a stigma, but it's just assumed that type 2 diabetics just always have high blood sugar levels. And so having that mentality really hinders diabetics from knowing what to do in emergency of a low blood sugar level. And like you said, it can be dangerous. It can lead to passing out. It can lead to um, possible emergencies that can be preventable. So having people understand, even if they never get a low blood sugar level in their life, it's good to know what to do in case it does.
Yeah.
Because it's always better to have and not need than to need and not have.
Yes, agreed. Agreed. And I think that is a perfect note to end this interview on.
Mhm.
Dr. Liz Cambron, thank you for joining me today. Please tell people where they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram at Dr. Liz Cambron. I also have a Facebook page, same Dr. Liz Cambron. And I do have a website I started, a blog that's Molcajete on Weebly. So check me out either there and feel free to ask questions.
All right, and everyone, I'll make sure that there are links to Liz's platform so that you know where to get in touch with
Mhm.
her. Again, she is an amazing follow. I know she inspires me to work out when I know I don't feel like working out. But she is truly one of the best type 2 diabetes advocates you'll find in the diabetes online community, and the space is so much better because she's in it. So thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
It was great having you on with me today.
Yeah.
And for everyone, please go to beyondtype2.org and check out
Mm.
some of our resources on hypoglycemia awareness and type 2 diabetes. The link will also be here in the description box. So please check out that. And in those resources, you'll find information on how to prepare for low blood sugar when you're outdoors, or if you want to prepare for severe hypoglycemia, or about nasal glucagon, which is the nasal spray to help you in emergency situations. So we have a lot of resources on this topic. And with Liz, we just added a patient experience. So you know why this is an important topic if you have type 2 diabetes. And thank
Yeah.
you everyone for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.